All right, today we're jumping into a pretty provocative online source that makes some, let's say, very bold claims about female psychology and desire. Now, our job here isn't to agree or disagree, but to simply break down the core argument so we can all understand the perspective it's presenting.
So the source doesn't exactly ease you into its main idea. It puts its central thesis right out there from the get-go. The argument is that under the surface, there's a whole world of desires that are a far cry from sugar and spice. And, this one claim is really the foundation for everything else we're about to look at.
So how in the world does the source even begin to justify that opening statement? Well, it starts with this idea of two personas. The argument is pretty simple. The personality someone shows in their everyday life, at work, with family, is totally separate from a hidden self that only comes out behind closed doors, and you can't predict one based on the other.
To start building its case, the source turns to a classic story, an archetype that pretty much everyone knows. The suggestion here is that if you just look at this old fairy tale through a different lens, you might see these so-called hidden desires hiding in plain sight.
Okay, so check this out. The conventional view, the one we all grew up with, is that this is a story about redemption, right? Belle's love sees the good person inside the monster. But the source's view, it completely flips that on its head. It suggests that the beast's monstrous nature isn't a flaw to be fixed, it's the very thing that makes him attractive to Belle in the first place.
And this quote just hammers that point home. The source isn't framing Belle's choice as one of patience or seeing inner beauty. No, it's framed as a deliberate preference for the wild, the untamed, over any of the more civilized guys she could have had.
Okay, so if the attraction is to the beast, what's the psychological engine making it all run? According to this source, it all comes down to a very specific kind of conquest. Let's dig into how they break that down.
So here's the crucial idea. The source argues that the ultimate prize isn't just getting the guy. It's about emotional domestication. It's the challenge of taming something or someone that nobody else can. It's about turning that wild horse into something that belongs only to you.
And this supposedly leads to a kind of self-defeating cycle. Step 1, you target the challenge, the bad boy. Step 2, you succeed, you tame him. But step 3, and this is the key part of the argument, the moment he's no longer a wild beast but a domesticated pet, the very thing that sparked the attraction in the first place is gone.
So you might be wondering, is this all just some weird theory about a fairy tale? The source says absolutely not. And it shifts its focus to modern media to argue that these exact same themes are more popular now than ever before.
The first piece of evidence they offer up is the absolute dominance of romance novels. Look at this. They make up a massive chunk of Kindle bestsellers, over 60%. And the source claims a huge driver of this is a subgenre it calls Romantasy, which, just like it sounds, mixes romance with fantasy.
And here's the connection back to the whole fairy tale thing. The source points out that the male heroes in these incredibly popular stories are often literal monsters. We're talking vampires, werewolves, all sorts of creatures. It's basically replaying that Beauty and the Beast dynamic over and over again. From there, the argument moves from fiction to another kind of media, and it highlights a really big statistical shift. It points out that pornography, which was once seen as almost exclusively for men, has seen a huge surge in female consumers.
Now, the source makes a very specific claim here about the type of content being consumed. It alleges that when you look at the data, themes involving deep submissiveness and even simulated violence have a higher female viewership. These are desires, it claims, that have no socially acceptable outlet, so they're sought out in private. So all of this, the fairy tales, the romance novels, the porn stats, it all leads to this very counterintuitive idea. It's something the source calls a paradox, and it totally challenges our common assumptions about what makes a man attractive.
The logic they lay out is actually surprisingly simple. The idea is, if prettiness is culturally seen as a feminine quality, then its direct opposite, ugliness, or at least a lack of prettiness, can by contrast become a signal of heightened masculinity.
And that's the whole paradox right there. The argument is that being rough, rugged, even a little beastly, can have its own kind of magnetic pull. This strange power operates on a completely different level from the conventional, chiseled handsomeness that a lot of guys aim for.
So after laying out this entire framework, from fairy tales to modern media to this ugliness paradox, the source wraps it all up with one final, direct piece of advice for its audience.
And there you have it. That's the final message. The source is essentially trying to reframe male anxiety. It's using this whole argument to suggest that the ways men often judge their own attractiveness might be missing the point entirely. So we'll leave you with this to chew on. Whether you buy into this perspective or think it's completely off the mark, what does the fact that this viewpoint even exists tell us? What might it reveal about all the unspoken, and sometimes contradictory, currents flowing just beneath the surface of modern relationships and attraction?